Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Browne here with you on this Tuesday morning, man. A lot of big things happening today. Matt Dean will join us here. Coach Matt Dean over at Rhodes College. And love having his insight. I don't know if it's the fact that he's from Ohio. Everybody That's been in Memphis a long time, 32 years. We got Jake Wimberly checking in, ESPN 105.9, the afternoon drive down in Jackson, Mississippi. He's doing so much work with the hourglass, looking into all these different matrix of what teams have, what they don't have, what they need, quarterback play, tight end play, wide receiver play. He does just a masterful job. Of course, the fact that he's a civil engineer certainly helps to put things in such a structured order, but it's every team out there, and we'll talk about that today. Hour number 2, Yancy Porter will check in, host of the Rebel Yell Hotline, along with Chuck Roundsville and the great group down there in Oxford, Monday nights, 6 p.m. on Sports 56 WHBQ and Super Talk Mississippi. And in the fourth segment, Rodney Orr checks in for the May Veterinary Clinic, Alabama Crimson Tide Report. May Veterinary Clinic opened in 1964 by Dr. Wayne May. 2 locations, Tuscaloosa and Northport. No matter where you live, it's worth the trip to get top flight care for your dogs and cats and other critters. They also have a doggy daycare facility called Camp May with a pool, and it's open. The clinic is every day of the week. Sundays, though, just for drop-off and pick-up, 3 to 5 p.m. If you have cats, like a bunch of cats in your house, okay, they are able to stay together in the connecting cat condos. So we'll be talking a lot. We're here 6 days a week, at least 25 shows a month, 50 hours a month of content. Plus, follow us on Twitter at Sidelines_live. And Matt, last night I'm watching the Buddy Martin show, which I do a lot, man, Monday through Thursday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern on Facebook and Twitter and all. And Buddy Martin and Franz Beard were talking, and leave it to Franz Beard to come up and go, want to say a word or two about Edgar the rattlesnake. Edgar the rattlesnake died yesterday. He was the world's largest and I guess oldest living in captivity rattlesnake, eastern diamondback rattlesnake. You ready for this? Edgar weighed in at 21 pounds and 6 ounces and was 7 feet 3 inches long. Oh, man. Goodbye, Edgar. Could you imagine, Matt, being out just meandering around and encountering a 7 foot 3 inch, 21 pound plus rattlesnake? I mean, the bite alone would break your bones.
Good morning, Rob. And no, I can't imagine that, Rob. I would run like a little boy as far away if I could get away from Edgar. Just so you know, I am not a fan of a gardener snake, let alone a 7'3" rattlesnake. Okay. Yeah. Growing up in Iowa, we didn't really see many rattlesnakes, Rob. I'm not gonna lie to you, but
they got it. Yeah.
Oh, yes, but the one thing I wanted to talk to you about, you kind of touched on it a little bit about everyone right now trying to figure out what they have in college football. You know, we're 3.5 months away from the start. I was listening to some shows yesterday where people are kind of talking a little bit about Alabama and Georgia. This is the first time in a while that, though they know probably who's going to be underneath center for their quarterback position, it's not like a household name, if that's a fair statement. And, you know, when you're prepared to play football that way, what do you need to help that quarterback, the young quarterback, the new quarterback? Well, you need an offensive line so you can run the football, and you also need a good defense. So I think I think the demise is not there because both those programs are going to play great, fundamentally sound football. They're going to have good line play, and they're going to play really good defense to give their younger quarterbacks a chance before you get in the fire of SEC play.
Yeah, and Matt, this is the first time that we've seen Alabama go into the portal. And Roman Harper was on the show a few weeks ago from SEC Network because he played at Alabama and played 11 years in the NFL. In Nick we trust is what he and he's an Alabama grad, but he's damn good on the air. He's objective.
One of the best. He is.
But you think about that. Whoever the quarterback is, and you're a coach, don't they have to come in and learn Nick Saban's system anyway?
Yeah. So I don't think I'm as concerned about that position as I am with other programs in the country, because the reality of the situation is, what has Nick and his teams always done really well? Well, they've been multiple. They've run the football. They played good defense, and usually they have good special teams, right? So the quarterback is part of the formula. I was listening to Greg McElroy talk yesterday, who was part of some championships. And, Greg was kind of labeled more of a game manager. He wasn't a Bryce Young, and he was able to lead them to championships. So he was confident in what you just said, I think what Roman Harper said, that we're going to trust Nick's formula. And really, where did Nick get it from? Where did Kirby get it from? Working for Nick, similar things at Georgia. They got position. They got players in every position on the field, Rob. So I think both those two programs are going to be really, really solid. One of the questions I have in the SEC East, can Joe Milton replicate the year at quarterback that Hooker had last year? Because really a lot of it is Heupel's offense, right? They're going to go downfield. They're going to take a lot of shots. They're going to put some athletes, and they're going to say, "Let's go. Let's fly this thing out."
Yeah.
And I thought Tennessee's defense played well at times last year too. So just really, I know it's May 23rd. Really looking forward to talking more about SEC football as we get closer into the summer.
Well, look, SEC and Big Ten. Speaking of, I'm going to talk about the Big Ten. Looking up at Iowa, I looked up in the draft. I was studying that Sunday night, late into the night. Iowa had 2 first-round draft picks. They had another one in the 3rd round. I mean, they've got some damn talented players. If they could, and Cade McNamara from Michigan, quarterback. It's you look at the number of games. Kirk Ferentz, he follows Hayden Fry. I mean, 2 coaches in the last 43 years, or longer than that, actually. But, there's talent all over the place. And Athlon did a draft preview. And you look at where guys were projected to be drafted and where they were drafted. But Iowa, one thing about it, if you get a coach off that Kirk Ferentz staff, and I would be looking to hire coaches from the Kirk Ferentz staff that have been there for several years, okay? You know why I want them? Number 1, they'll work their ass off. Number 2, they've got to be great at evaluating guys that are playing, and living out there below the radar. They got to go off the grid, off the beaten path a lot of times to find their players. Now, University of Iowa is a great school, got a great medical school. They got everything. And, it's got a medical school. It's got a law school.
Yeah.
They've got children's hospital. They're big, but I want those coaches that can go find the players. And you bring them to a school where there's talent everywhere around you. That's a powerful combination. But I just wanted to give you credit, man. You pointed that out about those Iowa Hawkeyes in the draft. 2 first-rounders. Ain't many schools in the country that can say that.
No, and honestly, Rob, development is the key thing with Iowa, because you're going to get more 3 stars than 4 stars, and sometimes more 2 stars than 4 stars. So I'm just telling you, Phil Parker was rated in a publication this spring as the top defensive coordinator in the country. Phil's been there with Kirk forever. A guy I really like is LeVar Woods, who's their special teams coach. Yeah. LeVar played at Iowa. He's been there for a long time, and he's someone, a lot of us are talking about the next chapter. Who will how much longer will Ferentz do it, and who will be his successor. I would love to see LeVar Woods, who's a younger coach, get a chance because he's a terrific recruiter. He loves the university. He represents the university really well on and off the field. And no, you're right. I love their staff. Jack Campbell, who was the 18th pick by the Detroit Lions, won the Buckus Award this year. Yeah. And I think the Lions they know what they're getting because Jack was probably picked a little higher than some of the projectors. But I think Dan Campbell likes that Iowa linebacker a lot.
Yeah. Well, you're going to get a full 60 out of those kind of kids because they're trying to they're told that they're not as good as the 4 stars and the 5 stars that populate a lot of the rosters like Michigan and Ohio State. I want a team full of fighters. I'm going to be completely transparent here. There are a lot of talented players, more highly rated on SEC rosters that are candy asses. They're not tough. And you know that. And I know that. And everybody listening, if they're honest with themselves, knows that. These guys, they go do all the 7-on-7 camps. They look good in the compression gear from Under Armour or Nike, whoever's making it. They look good doing all that. But how good are they when things aren't going their way? How good are they in terms of being teammates and leaders in the locker room and the off the field, activities like the OTAs, they call optional training activities. You know damn well if you don't participate in those, you're not going to get any playing time. But I'll tell you, of the 3,300 kids that will sign Division I scholarships in a given year, well, now that number's probably off a little bit because of the portal. Most of them are 3 stars. I mean, I'd say 75% are 3 stars or 2 stars. So you got to know what you're doing when developing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the key. I think, looking at the various leagues in the country, obviously, if you did probably a projection, Rob, of the SEC, they're going to have more 5 stars in that league than any other league. I mean, it's just some of it's geographics, right? And what's interesting, too, is you see some of the West Coast schools, because there's a lot of talent in California, they are sprinkled with some of those kids as well. But, like, from a roster makeup standpoint, that's what you have to get, Rob. You just hit on the head. It's the toughness on your roster. You have to get some kids that are willing to do what you described over a 3 to 4 year period to help build that, brand. Yeah. And what Georgia's in right now with their stacking of classes, of top classes, they're probably excited that they're going to see some new names out there knocking heads.
Yeah.
They've had 25 players drafted in the last 2 years. Is that
correct?
I think that's the number, pretty close.
Yeah.
That's just incredible. And now you're going to probably have some names we haven't heard that we'll know by week 3 or 4, Rob. I promise you that.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you one thing. What I believe the case is with the toughness part of it is a lot of these kids are good when they're surrounded by a lot of talented players. They look good. Mm-hmm. A lot of them cannot handle it when they've got to be the leader. I mean, I know that sounds crazy, but that's what I see. But yeah, you're right. A lot of talk about SEC, Big Ten, ACC, Pac-12, Big 12, American Athletic Conference, Sun Belt, Conference USA. They're good players everywhere. That's what is so much fun about this. And you study the draft, the NFL, and they're investing in these guys. I mean, they're going to find out everything they can about you. I'm going to go take the tough kid who's got a high IQ and he's got all the measurables. Those are important. But I want the guy that responds well to getting sucker punched. That's the guy that I want on the team. And, you look around on rosters and there's so many, there's stories. Every one of these players has a story, and that's what's so cool to follow. Matt, we're going to kick off this morning. And I'll tell you one thing. I'm looking here at the lineup for the SEC tournament this morning at 10:30 Eastern. Georgia and South Carolina will play in Hoover. After that, Texas A&M and Tennessee, 30 minutes after that game. Today at 5:30 Eastern, Alabama and Kentucky. And then 30 minutes after that game, the final game of the night, Missouri and Auburn. That's all first round SEC activity there in Hoover. And you know, one thing, wow. But anyway, there's all kind of stuff happening. You know, that you think that there's never a dull moment in what's going on in college athletics. And yesterday we talked about this, Matt. Dave Tompkins was on with us, and we talked about the Big Ten TV deal. I don't know if you're aware how did Kevin Warren is going back to the NFL, and how did they screw up that deal? Apparently, trying to work with what, NBC, Fox, and ESPN. They've messed it up somewhat, and now NBC is going to be showing night games in the Big Ten. You know what? I mean, actually, it's fun going to a night game when it's cold outside. I don't see that being a big problem. People in Big Ten country are used to cold weather. So am I. I'm a duck hunter. God bless. I mean, I'm big deal.
Honestly, Rob, I look forward to it. You know, Iowa has a great home venue. They play night games, and honestly, it's better atmosphere, as you know. You know, for years, the Big Ten would have that 11 a.m. slot on Saturday mornings, Central Time slot.
Called it Big Noon,
And it's a tough time, and you know, to get them on in better time slots, you're going to have some people see more of the product. You know, everyone talks about Ohio State, Michigan.
Matt, hold that thought real quick. Put the old hand up here. Going to take a quick break. I want to come back because I think night football in the Big Ten, they're actually going to come out better for it right after this. All right, Matt, let's keep this story going because, again, I love night football. And, you know, a lot of schools in the SEC, it was the early 80s when they started putting lights in. LSU wrote the book on night games. But I don't see it as a big deal. Now, we talked about it yesterday with Franz Beard and Dave Tompkins. But I can see where they're going to have – but that's prime time.
Yeah, that's what you want.
Yeah,
and you know, those programs have played night football before. I mean, so they're it's to me, it's not really going to be an issue. You know, I think when you're looking at longevity of contracts, it's more of an issue when you put on a night game in prime time and you have a dud, right? So I mean, one of the biggest things, as you know, is putting the right games on at the right time slots. And that's where some of the lower half of the league, you won't see them play that often, to be honest with you. Because the one thing I will tell you, it's like even last year, if you remember this game, when Tennessee was rolling, matter of fact, they may have been number 1 or number 2 next to Georgia. And then they go into South Carolina and Hooker gets hurt. South Carolina just buries them. And you don't see teams in the Big Ten usually where South Carolina was. South Carolina was what, 8-win team last year, maybe a 9 with Baldwin. They just buried the number 1 team in the country. Those matchups from lower tier to top tier in the Big Ten don't really happen that way, to be honest with you. There's not many teams that are 8-win teams in the Big Ten that are going to destroy Ohio State or Michigan. Now, back in 16-17, Iowa had a great performance when they beat Urban Meyer, like 55-24 in Iowa City, and that was an 8 or 9 win Iowa team that year. So they kind of caught them off guard. But you better make sure, Rob, when you have a night primetime game, you have a game. And if it's Ohio State and Michigan, You better hope they're matched up with a Penn State, maybe a Michigan State, depending on the year, Wisconsin, Iowa. Illinois had a good year last year, too. Brett Bielema has done a nice job since coming up to Champaign, whereas when he was in the SEC, he didn't really have it going that much with Arkansas, to be honest with you. Much differently.
Yeah. Well, and you talk about it. Purdue stomped Iowa. Purdue beat Ohio State badly, I think, in 2018.
They did.
So you do see some of those things up there. But, like I said, I think the football that you want to play night football. In the SEC, we look at that 11 a.m. game as the timeout game. It's almost like, you're in trouble because you're going to burn up. And I think that when you look at the big picture, it's all, as Jackie Sherrill, and we talk about every time he's on, he says it's about eyeballs.
Yeah.
How many people are watching these games? And, Big Ten, I think the narrative could be flipped over on its backside overnight if you started having regular season matchups, SEC versus Big Ten, SEC versus Pac-12, ACC, Big 12, during the regular season. I mean, because we get our jollies down here in the South about saying, oh, we dominated the Big Ten. Really, you're talking a bowl game in January. And frankly, most SEC teams suck in January. If they're not in the playoff, most of these kids are like little spoiled brats. They're not going to participate. A lot of them are quitting now. Don't give me that crap opt out. During the virus, it was like it's okay to be a fat, lazy slob and just be lazy and be a quitter. Oh, I'm going to stay home alone and go broke. No, we're not putting up with that. That's where this came from. And I'll tell you, I watch a lot of football, and you do too, Matt. Oregon, you remember last year, they come down here, get killed. You were at that game.
I was.
They bounce back and win 10 games. Iowa's got players. It's not like again, you talk about this direct flight, Eugene to Dallas-Fort Worth. I mean, there's a pipeline out there, man. Look at their roster and look where their players are coming from. There's a ton of kids from the South.
Well, they just signed, Rob, this weekend, committed 24 Michael Van Buren from the Baltimore area, who's like the number 11, 12, 13th rated quarterback in the country. And they've had 3 commitments this weekend, which push Oregon's class in the top 5 in the country. And that's with a staff that's not even been there, 18 months. So Oregon is in a unique position. They always have been with the support of Nike and Phil Knight. But they've flipped their roster completely. And that's one of the things that Coach Lanning wanted to do, was get a little tougher on the line of scrimmage, especially defensively. And they're going to be an interesting team to watch in the next few years, because I think we're going to look up and we're going to see a team built like an SEC team in Eugene, Oregon, that may be the most unique, composition of a football roster we've ever seen. Because when Oregon was playing for the national championship, their roster was, probably geared more toward their offensive side of the ball, to be honest with you. And I think now you're going to see more of a balanced look. They were able to land in the portal, Jordan Birch, the edge rusher from South Carolina.
Yeah.
And that's a kid that's going to have a little different look in the Pac-12, right? Coming off that edge, terrorizing quarterbacks. They also, landed an Alabama wide receiver. They landed at Ole Miss, I think, Tysheem Johnson, a cornerback. Their roster, I believe Oregon was like second or third in the country with the most roster changes in the mid-30s. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So
it's
unique. I don't think they're going to ever have that high of a number. But, Rob, I know for a fact part of their model is, besides high school recruiting, every year they're going to explore the portal. Every year.
Yeah.
You got to, as long as it's there.
and you're talking about Jordan Birch out of Columbia, South Carolina, where the University of South Carolina is. When he signed, he was one of the very top single-digit ranked players in the country. And how that's not worked out at South Carolina is a surprise. But, change of venue. He's going to leave and he's going to head out there to Oregon. But Kayvon Thibodeau, they've had some stud players. I'll tell you something that's interesting with Clemson. A couple of years ago, they had the number one player in the country. That was Kayvon Thibodeau, I think it was, wasn't it? He was committed to Clemson. And, Dabo Swinney has that policy. If you're committed to me, then don't take any other visits.
Right. Yeah.
So basically, if you're going to go to Clemson, take all your visits before you commit to Clemson.
Yes.
And they parted ways. And he goes to Oregon and has a hell of a career.
Rob, I was curious your thoughts. I think one of the most intriguing stories in preseason camp is going to be your alma mater's quarterback room. Don't you think that's going to be an interesting battle with them getting Peyton Thorne late? You have Robbie Ashford there. I mean, I'm real curious how that plays out with Hugh always being a quarterback's type of coach.
That quarterback room at Auburn, everyone seems to think with Peyton Thorne coming in from Michigan State, it's just a lock he's got the job. I mean, and Doug Dean, AU Dose in Birmingham, be on with us tomorrow. Doug sent me some really good video of Robbie Ashford's workouts. And it looks like he's working out in some complex under the new flyover there by Protective Life Stadium in Birmingham. But like I've said, this guy's faster than Nick Marshall.
Yeah.
He's got a cannon for an arm. He's just got to work on his mechanics and his short to intermediate throws. Nick Marshall had a cannon for an arm, 4.5 speed, cannon for, but the short and intermediate throws, that's where he struggled a little bit. And Holden Garner. There's Peyton Thorne has 26 starts at Michigan State. He's impressive looking. But you're going to see a hell of a fight for that quarterback spot. And maybe Freeze does try two quarterbacks. As a coach, that means that you've got to massage two Mount Everest-sized egos, though. Do you like doing that? I mean, if you've got two of them playing, name me the dual quarterbacks that have been successful.
Well, it wasn't by design initially, but the way it ended up with two of that year with Jalen Hurts worked out pretty well, right?
Yeah.
But to be honest with you, it doesn't really happen. But you see it early on in the season when people are trying to figure things out. Like, to be honest with you, if you remember Cade McNamara, him and J.J. McCarthy, Harbaugh played them both like equally for 2 games. And then like last year, he decided he was going to go with J.J. McCarthy. Even that's after, McNamara had led them to the college football playoff the year prior, right? And then I'm sure that didn't go well with Cade. He ends up transferring to Iowa after he gets hurt. And now he's the guy that's going to try to lead the Hawkeyes to win the Big Ten West. So the old saying is, Rob, you know this, when you have two quarterbacks, you have none, right?
Yeah.
So you're going to have to, and the only thing I've watched Peyton play a lot for Michigan State just because I watch a lot of Big Ten football.
How do you rate him?
I think he's a tough kid. I think he's a talented kid. He's had good numbers the last 2 years. Yeah. He does throw into coverage sometimes, and he's got a number of interceptions that may be higher than some other people that don't take those chances. But my biggest thing is you come into the program, April and May, there's a lot of playbook he has to learn these next few months before camp gets going. Whereas, Ashford was there, though, banged up a little bit last year, if I'm not mistaken, Rob. Very talented, dual threat quarterback, where Peyton is more of a not that he does not have mobility, don't get me wrong, but he's gonna look to throw it first.
That's why I wanted to hear it from you, because your eyeballs are not like most people's. You see things from a coach's perspective. You got a son that's a coach on the staff at Oregon with Dan Lanning. All right, now I'm thinking about dual quarterbacks. Independence High School, Charlotte, North Carolina, Chris Leak at Florida.
Yeah.
They would bring Tim Tebow in on the goal line set packages, whatever you want to call it.
You're right.
That was Chris Leak's team. And Chris Leak, they went on the road in 2003 and beat LSU in the swamp. I mean, in Death Valley. Chris Leak was a hell of a quarterback at Florida. I think about 1979, the fourth year Bobby Bowden was at Florida State. Wally Woodham and Jimmy Jordan, dual quarterbacks. That was a case where you saw it. I go back to 1972, Auburn, Randy Walls and Wade Watley, two quarterbacks. The backup the year before, a couple of years before to Auburn, Heisman Trophy winner Pat Sullivan was a guy named Dieter Brock, who transferred to Jacksonville State, played in the CFL for 30 years.
Didn't he play for the Rams for a while too?
Yeah, he did. And so it's just hard to find, again, the dual quarterbacks. But Mike Gittins, Mike G., the Auburn War Report, pointed out a couple of weeks ago about Peyton Thorne. He said he struggles with the pass rush sometimes.
Yeah.
And like you said, throwing in the coverage. You look at Tua, or look at Jalen Hurts in 2016, his first year at Alabama. 73% of the time he threw, he only threw in the pocket, 27% of the time. So he was rolling out. He was so athletic. He's legitimate 6'3" quarterback.
Yeah, and he did pretty well with the Eagles last year too, Rob. It's interesting with Jalen, you didn't know if you were a fan the type of character the young man had. Played for his dad, handled going to the sidelines well, came back, if you remember correctly, was a big reason the following year when they won in the college football playoff. And then goes to Oklahoma, has a special year, gets drafted, and now he's a MVP candidate in the league. And that, to me, stems from his character, Rob. He handled adversity really well. He knew he had it in him. He took, the role identification change, and he was a great teammate. And what you need are great teammates to win, and that's a rare thing to see happen at the quarterback position, right? Because usually it's a situation where it's very singular, even though we know it's a team sport. But as a quarterback, there's so many different things you have to do in a short period of time. And that was what you talked about with Peyton Thorne. That was my analysis from watching him play. 2 years ago, when he had a special year, he had in the backfield a young man named Kenneth Walker, who's now a tremendous running back for the Seattle Seahawks. And that's the one thing that I think Auburn can provide him with is, I know Tank has moved on to the NFL, but you've always had some talented running backs, and a quarterback's best friend is a running game. So hopefully that's going to happen for him.
Yeah. See, and that's why I'm asking you this. It's like, hey, I want to see. I like the old Coach Dye saying, I don't care who it is as long as he's got on a blue jersey, who the quarterback is. But you want to know everything. You want to know everything that you can about him. Matt, Jake Wimberly's on with us right now, host of a great sports radio show every afternoon, Monday through Friday, ESPN 105.9, The Afternoon Drive in Jackson, Mississippi, down on the banks of the mighty Pearl River, not the Mississippi like we are up here in Memphis, the mighty Mississippi. And Jake, you're a Mississippi native, aren't you?
Absolutely. 47 years.
Okay. It's not a multiple syllable word. It's just a couple of Mississippi. That's how we say it. I'm in Memphis, man, and my grandparents are from the Delta, so it's Mississippi. But Matt, Jake is a civil engineer, Mississippi State graduate, and he puts together some incredible matrix. And Jake, Matt is the longtime assistant men's basketball coach at Rhodes College in Memphis with Herb Hildegren, and also 16 years women's head basketball coach himself there. And he's got a son on the staff with Dan Lanning out in Oregon. So he's in his 32nd year at Rhodes, and he's from Davenport, Iowa. and he's an Iowa Hawkeye for life, but he's enamored by this crazy thing about Southern football. And we're lucky enough to get to talk about it every day, aren't we?
Oh, absolutely. And Matt, it's a pleasure to meet you, sir.
You too, Jake. We actually go down there to play Millsaps College a lot. I'm sure you're familiar with the majors.
Absolutely. Yep. They're right down the road from us. Literally from where I sit, we've got Millsaps about 10 minutes away, Belhaven about 8 minutes away, and Jackson State about 8 minutes away. All right. That's here.
Right. That's right.
Hey, Jake, I told Matt about your hourglass, the matrix that you do. And again, I want people to, every time you're on here, just kind of give a quick capsule of that. And then we're going to talk some Mississippi State with you and talking some SEC baseball and all. But Matt, it's some incredible stuff that I will definitely send to you after the show today.
Yeah, just real quickly, it's just it's a Moneyball approach to college football. I'm not unique in doing this. A lot of people do this. It just basically it's my way of putting together algorithms after years of studying college football and saying, hey, what's the most important thing to teams when you start talking about wins and losses? And you're never going to be 100%, obviously. Anybody that ever tells you they're 100%, they're probably lying to you. But I look at football teams, especially collegiate football teams, in a couple of different ways. One is recruiting. Obviously, we know that you got to have players. It doesn't matter how good a coach you are. If you don't have the players, that your ceiling is only going to go so high. So I look at things on a 3-year recruiting metric. That
you there?
Each team should have a head football coach. Am I still with you, Rob?
Yeah, you're there. You're there.
Okay. Look at a 3-year moving average on a football coach, and then of course returning quarterback play. What we call our wide receiver impact catcher metrics. Big time play receivers have become a bigger part of football than they ever have over the last 10 years. And then offensive and defensive scoring efficiency goes into that as well. So what it does is it creates a number stamp for each team that allows us to kind of model and pit teams against each other and say, predict outcomes, predictable outcomes. And then of course we take that information and we can use it in sports gaming as well in the fall. So, it's just a fun way that I like to do things. Obviously there's hits and misses. You talk about some of the biggest misses. I mean, I've missed on seasons for LSU really bad, Oklahoma really bad. So, then you hit a lot of stuff too. So it's just a different way. It's an analytical approach to wins and losses in college football.
Matt, when I look at data like that, what I think is cool is it's the cause and effect. Why is this team struggling and why is this team better than this team and all like that? Is that how you see this kind of data? Because when you read this, it is going to be like all of a sudden you're connecting all the dots and you got a masterpiece. That's what I love about it.
So my question is, and I think I may have this analogy, but like a lot of times in college basketball, I will go to Ken Palm ratings because there's an offensive and defensive metric. Jake, is that kind of what you're doing with college football? But you have the recruiting element in there too that Ken Palm doesn't deal with, right?
Correct. Yeah, you pull, and a lot of this data is pulled from other sources too. So the recruiting rankings are kind of a composite from On3, 247, and I really don't pull the ESPN metrics. Then you're looking at offensive and defensive scoring efficiency, which you can get that off model pages like KenPom too. So a lot of the data is out there. You just kind of pull it in the formula that I put together for this. But you're correct on that, Matt.
All right, I want to say now, Mississippi State. First off, I want to address baseball. What's going to happen, do you think, with Mississippi State baseball? Last night I'm looking on the color TV through the neighbors. They had the blinds pulled up. Cable's expensive. But I'm watching it, and it talks about banner year. 2 years later, here we are. Injuries, everybody's got – it's all – but can you pinpoint 2 or 3 things that have led Mississippi State to this, where they are?
Injuries is one, but I mean, you hate to blame injuries because every team has injuries. You would have to say that it's got to be some misses in recruiting at this point, maybe some misevaluation of players, and that happens in sports. Obviously, it's not perfect. And then there's been some coaching snafus there too. So I think, at least from what I'm hearing, and I'll get a better understanding of this today too, is that Chris Lemonis will get another year, but this will probably be the year. I mean, you're going to have to turn this thing around. And what does that look like? You need to punch a ticket to a regional. You need to get back to postseason play. So the one thing we all know about Mississippi State is this baseball program is extremely passionate. we had a caller call in this past week jokingly, I think, and said, hey, Mississippi State was to sweep Texas A&M. They should get a regional bid just because they'll sell out, their stadium for the whole thing. And they would, even as a team that's kind of under the radar. But yeah, this will be probably the last year, but he's going to have to get this thing right, get it turned around really quickly.
Well, and Matt, you look at baseball. Mississippi's the center of the universe for college baseball. I mean, last couple, you've got back-to-back national champions. Yeah. That's something to really be proud of. I don't understand like that, but I say to myself, you have a 3-game home series, and I know they count the turnstiles, but if you count the people out in the left field lounge and all, you're going to have 50,000 plus for 3 games. There are major league teams, Jake, that don't draw that well.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, you look at some of the issues going on out at Oakland with the A's wanting to move to Nevada, and there's a lot of stuff there. So you're right. I mean, the fans are extremely passionate. It's a baseball program that will be back. I guess the big question is it going to be Chris Lemonis that's going to get them back to where they want to be?
Yeah. I mean, I know from my perspective, Mississippi State is what put SEC baseball on the map. Even before LSU in the 90s won 5 national championships with Skip Bertman in an incredible decade. So it's fun to watch. Matt and I both were talking before you came on what's going on in college football. Eyeballs. Jackie Sherrill was on the show with us Friday while he was fishing up in Cutter, Arkansas on the White River, and caught some beautiful brown trout during the show. I said, Coach, that's the first brown trout ever caught on Sidelines. He sent me a bunch of pictures, and he called me yesterday. He said, did you get a lot of good response from that? I said, hey, it's one of the best segments we've ever had. He was talking about, he'd said this 31 years ago. We would go toward 2 super conferences, kind of like an NFL model. NFC East-West or NFC North, and you would have an East-West and like an AFC East-West. College, maybe 4 super conferences. And then Matt brought up the idea of having a national championship playoff for the schools outside of that, group of 5 or whatever you want to call it. But he keeps talking about eyeballs. Do you think the SEC will remain intact? I'm going to ask you first, Jake, and then you, Matt, if that happens. All 16, I'm going to go ahead and count Oklahoma and Texas in that group.
Yeah, I do. I don't think you're going to see anybody taken away. Mississippi State, I don't know if you guys remember this or not. I can't remember the guy's name. I'm going to probably butcher this. Mike Bianchi or somebody like that down in Orlando, a writer.
Yeah, Mike Bianchi. Yeah.
Thank you. And several years ago, he wrote a puff piece on Mississippi State and Ole Miss need to be pulled from the Southeastern Conference, and Central Florida and South Florida need to go into the conference. And I don't think you're going to see any attrition in the conference. I mean, look, let's be honest. Alabama, Georgia, they got to have teams they can beat, right? And when you look at Mississippi State and Ole Miss, for instance, in Vanderbilt, they all bring a different flavor to the conference. They all bring, something good to the conference, and not just in football, but in baseball, men's basketball, and some other stuff like that. So we got to look at it as a collective sport. But I do not see that happening. I think what happens probably is what we're seeing right now is the deterioration of the Pac-12. The Pac-12 will likely go away. Let's not forget last year, Oregon and Washington were in Chicago talking to the Big Ten last year. We've got this secret 7 or this magnificent 7 that's been talking in the ACC. This grants of rights deal is going to be tough for them to get out of, but they're trying to find a way. And a lot of those teams, when you look at the likes of North Carolina and Virginia and others, already kind of have a resume that's built for the Big Ten, where Clemson and Florida State and North Carolina State and maybe even Virginia Tech have something for the SEC. So I don't know that we have 4 conferences or 5 conferences. What we do know is the Big Ten is getting bigger. The SEC, I don't think is through expanding. And I think Jackie Sherrill's absolutely right. I think at some point you're going to see a breakaway from the NCAA, and I think you're going to see the biggest boys in college football have a model very similar to the NFL, where you have a commissioner, some sort of a players union. And I think that's what you'll see. And then I think you'll see the rest of the guys playing for another championship. I think that's where we're headed. Matt?
No, Jake's exactly right. And honestly, Jake makes a good point. With the USC and UCLA leaving the Pac-12 to go to the Big Ten, I think the next 2 schools are Oregon and Washington, trying to find their way in these 4 conferences. You'll take the best of the Big 12, the best of the ACC. We know the SEC and the Big 10 are solidified now. And then you'll end up with probably, like Jackie said, around 50, 55 teams. And you'll have the same model we're going to have here in the year, right? The 12-team playoff. And if you have 4 divisions, you have 4 byes, and you play it out from there. It's rather simple when you think of it that way.
Yeah, and you look at guys. I was watching last week the 150th anniversary of college football on ESPN. I think it was executive producer, director, whatever, Ivan Maisel, who's been around a long time. He's outstanding, and I'd like to get him back on the show again. Keith Donovan is now the historian for ESPN for college football. Keith's an Alabama guy, but he's outstanding. He talked about back in the 70s. Remember, we had that rule you could only be on TV 5 times over a 2-year period. He said we basically had a television aristocracy. The same teams on over and over and over. Southern Cal, Michigan, Ohio State, Alabama, Oklahoma, Texas, Penn State. And then you'd have Auburn and you'd have Georgia and Tennessee. But it wasn't until 1984, the CFA decision, Chuck Ninus, Oklahoma and Georgia really pushed it. Now we have every game on TV. What's funny is the more games that are on TV, you remember what the narrative was? Well, with all those games on TV, people won't go to watch them. Every stadium in America has had multiple expansions since then. But now in the last decade, what's the trend now? Reduced seating for putting lazy boys up in lounges and reclining chairs and bigger seats and all that kind of stuff. The popularity of college football is booming. It's just where you watch the games. Personally, there's a lot of things you can watch on TV, and I'm not going to go there, but there's a lot of things you can watch on TV, but there's some things that are only as good when you're there. And one of them is college football games. I would rather be there, even if I'm not in the stadium, for the atmosphere. That's what we've got to get people. But I just think about, Jake, you remember when Ole Miss had trouble getting people to go to the games because they like to go to the Grove so much. Mississippi State's got a hell of a tailgating area. I've been to a lot of games there, but they like to be in that stadium. Is that a problem?
I think, look, here's where it's a very interesting conversation to have, because we have this conversation here with high school sports, and I'll tell you why that comes back down to the high school level. So, yes, I think we're all around the same age. You couldn't pull me out of a football stadium back when I was a child or a teenager. It could be sleet and rain, whatever. I'm going to sit at a ball game for 4 quarters on a metal bleacher, freeze my rear end off, and watch a football game. Yeah, people now in their 20s aren't wired like that. They're not going to do that. So, they need access. They need Wi-Fi. They need all this stuff that's out there as far as, they want to be able to get on their phone and take Snapchats and do this and do that. That's the most important thing. So I think while you're seeing some of the reduction, you're building those fan spaces where people can hang out and get them into the building. We see this very similar to the NBA. You go to an NBA game and it's an event with a basketball game going on in the middle of it. So, we've had that conversation here in the state of Mississippi with high school football, because it's become such a popular deal to stream your football games here. And does that take away from the crowd experience? Well, not really. No. People just want more access. So the first team or school that starts retrofitting stadiums to fit and cater to high school kids and high school parents, they're going to win there too. So I think it's just the evolution of where we are.
Matt?
Jake's 100% correct. And you got to realize too, the whole college football attendance, even when your team is not competing for upper level, conference or also for a national championship, there are so many things that bring you back to that institution. We got 20, 30 friend groups that want to tailgate and then go in the game together and catch up. It's not always just about college football. And the 20-something crowd, Jake, you're 100% correct. I've been a season ticket holder for the Titans for a long time, since they moved from Houston and stopped in Memphis for a year. And now all of a sudden you're looking at a situation where I have to re-up for my PSL that I purchased 20 years ago because we got to have a better stadium. I mean, Nissan Stadium's a great stadium. We got to build this new dome, whatever they're talking about. And it's just like, you have to – facilities matter. Facilities matter, and not only just being in a stadium, but the accessories and accommodations you have are probably more important, like Jake says.
Yeah, and I remember when the SEC network was launched in August of 2014, most every school in the conference had to spend a minimum $5 million on a TV, media studio for all those remote shots for SEC network. But the payoff has been significant. Although I will tell you, there's a lot of bias on the SEC network. When you've got people on there, it's okay to have people on there from a school, a conference member, but damn it, you've got to be objective. I mean, I'm harder on Auburn and more critical of Auburn than I am of any school in America. I will rip. I mean, in fact, I will be the first one to I don't drink the Kool-Aid is what I'm saying. And you look at what I've seen in softball, the bias on there about, and then like Philip Marshall, who I think is an outstanding writer. His father, the late Benny Marshall, was the sports editor of the Birmingham News, Hall of Fame writer. Philip Marshall was right. And he talked about, just look at the SEC network on baseball coverage. Oh, Tennessee, this incredible turnaround in the second half of the season. They were 5-10 and they won 11 of their last 15 games. Oh my! Sound like Nick Huber, voice of the Florida Gators, who retired before last season. Well, he didn't mention a word about Auburn was 5-10 in the first half and won 12 of their last 15. Oh, forget that. I mean, damn it, when you're on the SEC network and you have that kind of platform, you have got to put your allegiances to your school aside. Jake, you're a Mississippi State guy, but I bet you're the first one to point out when they don't play well that they're not playing well.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm not a Kool-Aid drinker either. And, I try to stay extremely neutral in what we do because, you don't just cover State or Ole Miss. You're covering the Southeastern Conference, or you're covering, the Big Ten, how listeners are. It's funny. I mean, I've been called an Ole Miss fan before. I've been called an Alabama fan, or this homer or that homer, depends on what. But yeah, objectivity is the key. And then but sometimes, as you well know, in a lot of circles, that just doesn't happen.
Matt, again, you've got a son on the staff at Iowa. You coach at Rhodes. You're an Iowa fan. You're as critical of Iowa. If you were on a platform like the Big Ten Network, I don't think that you would hold back in your criticism of your school at all. That's why I love having both of y'all on this show.
Last year with the quarterback play at Iowa having a top 5 defense, I was
time out. Sorry, I missed a break. Mildred just showed me the timer. We're going to take a quick break, come back and pick up on it.
Sounds good.
See that thing? God.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Rob Browne back here with Jake Wimberly and Matt Dean. I know both of y'all have got to drop off here in a couple of minutes, and then Yancy Porter will be on and Rodney Orr in the second hour. But, Matt, didn't mean to cut you off before the break, but I had to go to those commercials. Pick up on what you were saying. I want to hear this.
No, I mean, we're talking about telling it like it is, basically. And for us Iowa fans last year, and I'm not a host of an Iowa show. I'm a fan, right? So, so the bottom line was they had a top 5 defense in the country, and they were like 130th in total offense. So, what's hard sometimes is we get on these 18 to 22-year-olds, and it's really unfair at the quarterback position. I felt a lot for Spencer Petras last year. He got a lot of undue criticism because I think it was should have been more directed at the coach's son, Brian Ferentz, who was the offensive coordinator. And a lot of the poor play on offense should go right to the offensive coordinator. But, Tyler, my son, who's out at Oregon with Dan Lanning, it's been great following them. I never watched the Pac-12 at all until last year. I bought a couple things to get the Pac-12 network. And I got to tell you guys, I love watching the SEC network. And Rob, a former Auburn linebacker, T.O. Spikes, is one of my favorite guys. When he gets in there, if Auburn plays poorly, he's going to let everyone know that. Yeah. But the Pac-12, man, I can see why USC and UCLA left from a financial standpoint. They are not doing it on the media side either. No. And I just saw something yesterday where the Washington State AD came out and they're like doing a hiring freeze because their generated source of revenue this year from the distributions from the Pac-12 was lower than they thought, and it's going to get lower.
Yeah. That's a problem. And look, guys, I love this discussion that we're having because we're getting somewhere. If I've watched I can get the Pac-12 network over here at the farm, and it's awful. I mean, how many times can you show the Stanford Cal game from 1982, the multilateral? I mean that they've got a product out there, but they don't appreciate it. But Jake, look. About out of time. I know you and Matt both, man, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to join us. We appreciate it. Our listeners do. I can tell by the feedback they're going, get these guys back on together because that's a lot of IQ points. So maybe y'all can take some ACTs for some people. But Jake, let people know what they're going to be hearing on your show today and how they can follow you before we let you and Matt go. And Matt, you do the same thing.
Yeah, on Twitter at Jake Wim. You can stream the show if you're outside the Jackson metro area on the zone1059.com. Today we're going to be talking Mississippi State baseball, likely with David Murray. We'll talk a little football. Going to jump into some of that Pac-12 discussion with a writer out of the West Coast. We're going to get into some of that and, of course, talk about this AD situation going on at USC and then a lot of other college football notes and nuggets today as well.
Jake, that's what I love about your show. You are all over the place, based in Mississippi with a national perspective. Mississippi, 2 syllables, Mississippi. Jake, thank you so much, man. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, Matt. Pleasure to meet you, sir.
You too, Jake. Look forward to next time. Thank you.
Absolutely. Take care, guys.
You bet. You too. I'll tell you one thing, man. That's what I love. And I've got I'm reaching out to a writer myself on the West Coast for more information about the Southern Cal athletic director thing. But I read in the LA Times last night some stuff about that guy. Look, I got 2 boys. I got 2 girls. I got 2 older sisters. I got a mother. If I ever, when I was growing up, had been accused of doing anything, inappropriate, I'd have had my ass beat by my mother and my father, but it's just, I don't know what would have happened. But I don't know what's going on here. But what I read, Matt, you got to use common sense, man.
Rob, I was never familiar with Mike Bone. I didn't really follow his career. And, most of the time we don't follow AD's careers, right? We follow coaches' careers. We follow players' careers, right?
Yep.
But when you hear some of the things that came out, and I'm not going to talk about what I read or what I heard, because the reality is, it's going to be played out.
Yeah.
But man, you talk about a lack of judgment and common sense if it's true.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's just really very unfortunate. You're leading one of the premier programs, departments in athletics historically in the country.
Yes.
And this is what's you're gonna die on. That's the sword you're gonna die on.
Yeah.
He better figure his last chapter in life out, because he just affected his own legacy if that's the case.
Yeah, I mean, it absolutely is. And Matt, I hope you can stay with us if you got to go. Okay, about 5 minutes. Okay. Yancy Porter on here with us right now. Of course, as I mentioned in the first hour, Yancy Porter is host along with Chuck Rounsville, the Rebel Yell Hotline. Catch it every Monday night, 6 p.m., Sports 56, WHBQ in Memphis, and Super Talk, Mississippi. All right. Great program. I just had Jake Wimberly on from down in Jackson, Mississippi. Said it isn't Mississippi. People try to, I tell you know how I learned, Yancy and Matt, when I was a kid to spell Mississippi. I was they used to have this cheerleading camp up here in Memphis over on Grandview by the campus. All the college cheerleaders would be up here. And I'd go over there being a young boy, and I was like, damn right, I'm going over there to check that out. And had the Ole Miss cheerleaders out there, and they had a cheer back in the day in the 70s called M-I-S-S-I-P-P-I. When's the last time y'all heard that?
It should just be M-I, six S's, 2 P's, and I.
That's right, Mississippi. That's right. Matt Dean's on with us right now, Yancy, and we have been having a wild discussion. And as I mentioned in the first hour, again, our condolences to Edgar the Rattlesnake, passed away yesterday. Yancy, I told Matt earlier, Franz Beard reminded us yesterday. I heard him on the Buddy Martin show last night. Edgar the Rattlesnake lived at the Central Florida Zoo in Orlando. He was 7 feet, 3 inches long, weighed 21 pounds and 6 ounces, was 18 years old. Wow. Damn. I'm glad I never came across Edgar turkey hunting or just bird watching or duck hunting, because 7 feet, 3 inches, that's almost as tall as Yao Ming.
Yeah, I don't like snakes too much. I'm glad I never ran into Edgar myself.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yancy, a lot happening right now, but Matt Dean and I were talking about baseball. Center of the universe for college baseball in the state of Mississippi. And Matt, we talked about it with you earlier, but now Ole Miss and Mississippi State, both of them are struggling. I can't understand that. I look at that stadium, $128 million, Matt, has been put into Swayze Stadium there in Oxford. Is help on the way?
Well, it better be. I tell you what, this is actually the first time in the SEC tournament history that since 1980, I believe 6 is when they went to the format here. They've had it so many different ways, but when they started doing the format in Hoover, first time in Hoover that both teams have never been there. Yeah, one has missed it, the others missed it, but not both of them have missed it in the same year. So, it feels weird. I think this is the second year under Bianco in 23 years. Ole Miss didn't make the SEC tournament. The other year that they didn't make it, they won 39 games, so it was a whole different scenario than this year. So it's a weird feeling. It snowballed on Ole Miss, Mississippi State. I think they've got a good young nucleus of position players. They just did not have the pitching. On Ole Miss's side, they didn't have that excuse with the position players. Heck, a third of their starters there made all SEC. That just came out yesterday. The Player of the Year award in Mississippi went to Kemp Alderman. They had the talent. They just I don't know. Maybe they read too many press clippings from last year and too many girls and too many beers and everything else. I don't know. I mean, the pitcher, their 3 top arms got hurt at the beginning of the year, and that was a killer, no doubt about it. I mean, it really snowballed, and really got the position players pressing. Everybody's trying to hit 10-run home runs once they started getting on a roll. But 6 wins, that never. You'll have 6 or 7 of these position players that get drafted in the top 5 rounds, and it's just that is a head scratcher. I I don't know if quit's the word, but they definitely didn't believe in themselves as the season got going.
Yeah. Matt, how do you fix it?
Well, yes, he touched upon it. I mean, if your top three of your top arms aren't available or get hurt and maybe never reach their full potential, I mean, you look at it every weekend. You need your 1, 2, and 3 pitching, and usually you need them pitching deep into a ball game so you don't use up your bullpen for the whole weekend, right? Because I know we face similar problem at Rhodes this year. You're going to have those midweek games where you're going to throw a lot of times an opener and maybe your 4 and 5 guys, but like college baseball pitching staffs, they have to stay healthy. And I'm not making an excuse, Yancy, but if you're telling me your top 3 arms weren't your top 3 arms, I mean, I agree. 6 wins in the conference is not going to cut it, but I can see why it was a down year.
Yeah, and the problem is they didn't have any time to plan for it, right? The arms went down right before. One of them went down. 2 of them went down right before the season, and the other one went down the first weekend of the season.
Yeah.
So, it wasn't like they went down before the season started. They had time to recruit for it and adjust it and go get some JUCOs or portals. It just, there was no open market at that point to add anybody to the team. And I believe 68% of the innings were pitched this year by freshmen, which led the SEC by a ton. And those freshmen were supposed to be midweek pitchers, right? Yeah. Maybe 1 or 2 got in some bullpen action on the weekend, but then you got 9 freshmen that are pitching on SEC weekends and starters. And, on the SEC, 2 of the 3 starters were freshmen for the weekend. And like I said, I think it just spilled over to the position players. Everybody started trying to, hit 10-run home runs, and they were swinging at bad pitches. And it's just, baseball outside of the golf is the biggest mental game in sports. It is a team sport, but it's an individual, right? The ball hit to you, you're at the plate, it's 1-on-1, you're pitching, it's 1-on-1. And it just, it's such it can go against you mentally. And when you get on a bad roll, and I mean, I'm telling you, by the end of the year, I think Oxford High could have beaten Ole Miss. I mean, they were just absolutely pathetic. It was, if I'm opposing SEC team, I mean, they made Auburn and Alabama's years, right? You want Ole Miss on that schedule. I mean, they were getting swept whoever played them. And it's never had happened in the Bianco era like that. His second year, they were number 4 in the country, and they lost their last 13 games in a row, missed the SEC tournament by a game and missed the NCAAs, but they won 39 games. And, it snowballed at the end of that year. That was, 22 years ago. But that's the only thing close that's ever happened like this in the Bianco era.
Yeah. Well, y'all both, we talked about just at the end of the year, they were unrecognizable. And as a coach, you go back to last year, Ole Miss was like the last team to get into the NCAA tournament, Matt.
Yeah.
And they win the national championship, the College World Series. Yancy, do you see any other SEC team this year that might strike a similar path to Omaha and bring home the trophy? Any similarities to what you saw out of Ole Miss last year?
I don't know. There's been a lot of talk with LSU, and LSU does not fit that bill, right? They've been towards the top of the rankings all year, but LSU just doesn't have the pitching. They're not going to win it. I'll be surprised if they get out of their own regional. You can't go into postseason play with one pitcher. You just can't do it. They have no bullpen. They've got the best pitcher in the world. We all know Skinas, what he can do, but after that, I mean, it's just a crapshoot. So, I feel like that's the safest bet as far as the upsets go. I project LSU to go very early out of the NCAA tournament. Tennessee could be a team that, they had a bitter taste, very similar last year to Ole Miss. The year before, Ole Miss felt like, they had the best team in the country. They get beat in game 3 of the Supers. And, and Tennessee last year felt like they had the best team in the country and got beat, in game 3 of the Supers. And last year, Ole Miss started off 18-2, was ranked number 1 in the country, and then really struggled. Tennessee got off to a hot start this year, and then really struggled. And then I'm not sure what series that it was Vanderbilt where they really kind of, found themselves and got on a roll, and they're playing really good baseball. They got two outstanding pitchers. You got to have two big time starters and a closer to win it all. You just have to. You've got to have two shutdown starters and a shutdown closer, and stay in the winners bracket. And I think Tennessee's got that ability. I don't think Arkansas has the shutdown starters and closer, and that's going to really hurt them. Vanderbilt, they're not playing well right now. And then, Florida has got probably the best player in the country, I think, who also pitches. I definitely think they got a shot. Then you got Alabama and Auburn that both really caught fire here at the end. What a story with Alabama, right? Rob, the last time I think I was on the show, we were talking about the gambling incident, and I said that, we didn't know what had surfaced at that time. And, for them to turn it around like they did. And then, Butch over there at Auburn, he just continues to amaze me. If you'd have told me midway through the year that Auburn would even be sniffing the NCAAs, I would have said no way. And now look at them. So, Auburn, Alabama, Tennessee kind of have that story like Ole Miss did last year. But I think Tennessee has the makeup with those two starters and a great closer there and enough hitting too. So I think my best bet would be Tennessee.
Yeah, I wouldn't, you can make an argument for all of them, but that's a good bet. And you go back to, we got to take a break here, but the way Ole Miss did it last year, Elko and the boys, man, it was just incredible. I picked up a book at one of the last remaining bookstores in North America in Laurelwood the other day about the Ole Miss national champions. Great story. We'll be right back. Yancy Porter. We're talking again a lot of baseball. It's baseball season and all, and it is. You're right. Golf, and then the mental part of it. Yeah, these are. You can have the Ryder Cup. You play in forces in golf and PGA, tour events. Baseball, you've got 9 guys out there. But man, the pitchers. I go back to Mississippi State, I think in 2019, their top 7 pitchers were all injured. They still got to the College World Series. And I'm not sure. I've seen Darren Schoenrock, who'd been at Memphis for 18 years as the head baseball coach, is now down at Auburn. He was Butch Thompson's coach at Birmingham Southern. And now he's come and working with Butch Thompson. He's been a calming influence. Is there a coach on that staff at Ole Miss that's been there long enough? Obviously, Mike Bianco, 23 years, but is there someone there that you're going to, you can say comfortably, he's going to figure this out. They'll be okay, because recruiting wise, Ole Miss is stacked with elite talent, aren't they?
Yeah, this is the first. Last year they had the number 2 class. This year they got the number 3 class coming in. So this will be the first time in the Bianco era they've had back-to-back top classes. It's a lot of misperceptions about Ole Miss and recruiting in the past. The way it always goes is that they'll have a top 3 class, then they'll have a class they don't have as much scholarship the next year, and they'll have about a 28 to 35 ranked class. And then the third year, they get a little bit more scholarship, and they'll have about an 18 to 25 ranked class. Because like the state of Alabama, Mississippi, especially Ole Miss, because Mississippi State, they started allowing connecting states to charge them in-state tuition, which is the difference in $7,000 to $28,000. So that's been a big feather in their cap to be able to get some players in there. But Ole Miss doesn't do that. So the state of Alabama does not have any hope money or scholarship money coming from, from the state funds. So they're in the same boat. But now the NIL has really leveled things off, and this is allowing Ole Miss, I believe, for the next 3 classes in a row, they've got top 5 classes already on the board. So the talent's coming in, and the good thing for Ole Miss is they could possibly lose 8 of their position players, starters. I mean, we're talking about this is going to be an overhaul, but it is very heavy on position players. They've got, arguably the top shortstop, second baseman, center fielder, and catcher coming in this year. Now, the problem with that, though, is that what happens with the draft. So there's, that draft is going to really be make or break for next year's team, in my opinion. If it breaks them, they're going to have to go heavy in the portal. And that's not really something Bianco likes to do. He likes to develop the players. He doesn't want somebody that's been developed under somebody else and then take them for a year. So, it's a real sticky situation for sure. That I forget the date, maybe June 22nd. They moved the draft up last year. It used to be during the regionals, or maybe it's July 22nd. It's later. It's not that first weekend like it was, and why they had it that weekend, I have no idea. Always was a big distraction. A player goes first round while he's sitting there, on the mound, NCAA regional, trying to negotiate his contract. And it was a huge distraction. So they got it later this year in July for the draft. And that is really going to be big. They've got a lot of talented players coming in, position players especially. Now, the pitching staff, on the other hand, they only lose 1 pitcher. And those non-freshman pitchers now will be sophomores next year. And they've got kicked around, so to speak, as 99% of all freshmen do. And they've taken their lumps, and they should be ready next year. So regardless, next year's team, they're going to have to lean on those pitchers. Those pitchers are going to have to make a big jump. And, and then those guys that were injured, right? Those top 3 arms, what happens with them? They brought Hunter Elliott back for 1 inning, 2 months after he was injured. He re-injured the arm. He's having UCL surgery, but he's having a hybrid surgery. So instead of a 12 to 14 month surgery, it's going to be projected 4 to 8 month surgery. So they should get him back by the beginning of next year. And if they do, that's going to make a huge difference. Then their All-American closer that went through UCL surgery, he got hurt right before the start of the season. He'll be back, but he's also draft eligible. Where does Mallets go in the draft? So those are going to be 2 big, concerns, issues that have to be resolved. What happens with those 2 guys? And then if they do come back along with the freshmen that got, their experience last year, they'll have a chance on the mound to kind of cover up for the lack of hitting. And then hopefully those hitters start coming around towards the end of the year, and things I think can be fine. But, there's a lot of that's a lot of variables, right? What happens to the position players, the high school guys, what happens to their top 2 arms? Does one go in the draft or not? Does Hunter Elliott, does the hybrid surgery? Is he ready by the beginning of the year? If he is he still going to pitch, or does he make sure he's healthy for the draft coming up next summer? There's a lot of question marks. I don't think there's been this many question marks ever in the Bianco era going into the all season. I look for them still to go heavy in the portal regardless. You can't just rely. The 2016 class was ranked number 1. That was Thomas Dillard, and Kessinger and Rollison and all those guys. I think there were 7 freshman starters and 2 weekend starters that were freshmen. And, they struggled that first year. Now the next 2 years they were national seeds and that won SEC and everything else. But you can't just put in a bunch of freshmen like we saw on the mound this year for Ole Miss, and they're going to struggle. So if they rely real heavily on all those freshmen next year, it could be a struggle. So they're going to have to go into the portal, or maybe get a couple of JUCOs, some experienced guys. But the one thing I've noticed, guys, with the portal is that for the most part now, not all of them, but the hitters struggle in the portal, the guys that come out of the portal from other conferences, which is all of them, because the SEC is not allowing them to transfer in, or I haven't seen it where SEC players have transferred within the conference in baseball like we're seeing in especially football and some in basketball. But if they're coming from out of the conference, hitters struggle when it gets to SEC play. They do find an out-of-conference play, but once that SEC starts, they struggle. And so if you're getting a bunch of portal players and position players, you just got to know that. It takes a year, no matter where you come from, you're a freshman, JUCO, whatever. It takes a year to get adjusted to SEC pitching. And so pitching staff next year for Ole Miss, in my opinion.
Well, you're right, and there's so much you've got to be able to recognize: a breaking ball, a curveball, a slider, fastball, changeup. I mean, you're right. It's so similar to golf. That's kind of. Now I want to switch gears. Let's switch over in football. You're talking about the portal. That's something Lane Kiffin and this staff are really good at, is going out and finding guys that might not be playing well at another school, bringing them in. They've got a prior, maybe relationship. Maybe they recruited the kids, but they get things. And I'm seeing with the portal, it looks like about 70% of the top 100 players are signing with the top 8 schools. That's a pattern. You're seeing some movement of Power 5 to Power 5. We got some examples of success there. We all know who they are. But it looks more like Power 5 goes down to a Group of 5, and Group of 5 players are moving up to the Power 5.
Yeah.
It's very similar to the Major League Baseball model with the farm system, isn't it?
It is. I mean, look at what's happened with Ole Miss, and this is not the norm. I mean, they brought back 62 scholarship players.
62. Yeah. Yancy, we're losing you here. I think your signal, I don't know where you are, but keep going.
Ole Miss brought back 62 players, scholarship players, after the end of the season. 33 of those guys went into the portal. So you are talking about some major transition. I mean, that's over half of your scholarship players. And so it has been, Rob, I remember during the season, I said, I don't expect Ole Miss to go as deep as they did inside of the portal this past year, coming up into this 23 season. And they're going to double what they did last year in the portal. It is wild. But I'll tell you this. I mean, even though there's been that much movement, they've really improved their roster. I mean, you look at this past week, they get the top corner and the top defensive end in the transfer portal there in Gaddy and the kid out of James Madison. And then they get a really solid defensive tackle there out of Nebraska, Stephon Wynn. They're doing a lot of good things. They still got 8 scholarships open that are probably going to be spent on all the portal. I look for them to pick up another running back to get some depth there. I look them, they but they got beat out for their key wide receiver. He went, Keon Coleman went to Florida State over Ole Miss. That was a big loss for them. So they still got to fill that spot because Chris Marshall, right, the big time wide receiver that they picked up from Texas A&M, he gets in, he's racing cars and gets in a chase allegedly with some cops and down the highway, and he runs out of gas, and they pick him up, and Lane said that's it, and so he kicked him off the team. So they've got to fill that hole. They need to still go get another defensive end, as everybody does, right? And a linebacker and a safety. So it's ongoing. This roster, I don't have any idea how you do this, but luckily they've got Lane, right? Someone that his experience of being in the NFL and dealing with free agents and roster construction there really was invaluable for when he came to Ole Miss and you have this much movement. Because look, no roster in America had, over half of their guys go in the portal, but Ole Miss. So Lane has got a good thumb on it, and I think he's really improved the roster and their experience. Rob, we were doing this last night on the show.
Yeah.
18 of their 22 guys in the two deep rotation on Ole Miss's defense. Now listen to this. They've got 2 guys that will be 7th-year seniors. They've got 6 guys that will be 6-year seniors. And they got 9 guys that will be 5th-year seniors. So this is going to be they've got a guy that picked up that's 26 years old from James Madison. Not only is he a 7th-year senior, but he missed. This kid came out in 2016.
Wow.
He missed 2 years of football because of an ACL injury.
Yeah.
And 18 and 19. So he saved some eligibility, but this will be his 7th year. And, it's going to be a very experienced defense. They've lost some good players too now. That deep defensive line that I bragged about last year, having 12, 13 guys ready, that's dwindled really down to 8 right now. And it would have been down to 6 if it wasn't for these last 2 guys that they committed last week. They got really hit hard. And obviously, right, they were playing 3 men, last year, 3 down line, and you got 12, 13 guys that could all arguably be the starters. So a lot of feelings were hurt, not a lot of playing time for a lot of players that, could get playing time at other programs, and they took off, including Tyrone Malone, who's a top 50 national recruit. He went to Ohio State 2 weeks back. So they lost some guys, but they really picked up some guys too, and it is going to be a total different team. Same quarterback, same coach, same running back. But other than that, it is going to be a lot of new players out there from all over the country.
Well, again, in the case of Tyrone Malone, sounds like somebody that can't pronounce their R's, Tyrone.
Yep.
From New Jersey. Also a hell of a first baseman. I'll be surprised if he plays much at Ohio State because, look, one thing about it, if a dog will bite, he'll do it when he's a pup. You hear that over and over. He should have showed up at Ole Miss, and it's not Ole Miss's fault. They think about that, and you were right. You laid it out. A dozen SEC caliber quality defensive linemen. That's a luxury. Not a lot of schools have that or had that.
Yeah. I think, in Malone's case, trying to play 2 sports there was a killer for him. And he just couldn't catch up to balls that were over 88 miles an hour. So that really hurt him once conference pitching came around. So he didn't get any playing time. So he wasn't playing much in football, and he wasn't playing at all in baseball. And then, interesting take, Ohio State's begging to get him. So, this year he's going into his junior year. He's concentrating on football. He's going to go in there and, be in the football program all through the summer, all through the fall. And I expect him to have a really good year, and I expect him to probably get drafted. And I think he'll be gone. I think he'll be there at Ohio State for about 6-8 months, and he'll go in the draft. And it's kind of a shame, because I think he had a total of 22 tackles in 2 years at Ole Miss, and didn't play. I don't even think he got into an SEC game in baseball. So, a wasted career there at Ole Miss, but you see that. But I'm wishing him all the luck. Great family, great dad. I sat next to his dad and watched baseball with him. And, baseball is his love, but football is what he's best at. So, but it's going to be a total different Ole Miss football team this year. Players all over the field. Now they do they do return. They're starting 4 there on the defensive line will be guys that were there last year, and on the offensive line, 4 out of the 5 guys will be back. So on the line of scrimmage, as far as the starters, it's going to be the same guys. The depth, though, the guys behind the other players, that's where you're going to see a large turnover. I think Freeze and Kiffin have done a great job here in the portal this year.
Yeah.
And Freeze has adjusted well, but Freeze really, he didn't have a choice, right? He had to had to go into the portal and go heavy. And but I think Freeze, I'm really impressed what he did because he was not doing that at Liberty.
Yeah.
So this was a new game for him.
Yeah. Hold that. We're going to take a quick break. We'll come right back for another minute with Yancy Porter.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Porter, great stuff. We've got to go. Rodney Orr, Tider Insiders coming on with us here in just a second. But you've done a great job of laying out in the open what's going on at Ole Miss, baseball and football. And again, we know what happens. The secret ingredient to making SEC defenses so great and special and elite in many cases is the depth on the front 7. So we're going to get into that again more, Yancy, next week when you're on. But my God, great stuff as always. How do people follow you? And we'll do it again.
Yeah, sure. Enjoyed it. At Yancy Porter, Twitter and Facebook, and with the radio program. Can be heard anywhere on Super Talk or WHBQs in podcast form, and always visit my boy Chuck Roundsville's website there at the Ole Miss Spirit on 3 Sports.
Yeah, Chuck Roundsville is one of the nicest guys. He is. You and him on the air. I mean, it is a great show. Harry Harrison, Gary Darby, the whole crew. I love that show. They just need to give y'all more airtime. And I know you got to get sponsors, but I love the show. But thank you so much, Yancy.
Thank you, Rob. God bless. Y'all take care.
You bet. God bless you, man. Take care. One of the good guys out there. I love him, man. Yancy Porter, Rebel Yell Hotline. Let's head to another one of our favorites, a saint of a man. This is the May Veterinary Clinic, Alabama Crimson Tide Report, brought to you by May Veterinary Clinic since 1964, Tuscaloosa and Northport, 2 locations, open every day of the week. Remember, top flight veterinary medicine care. Dr. Waller May, Dr. Guy May, and the fellow associate veterinarians they have there, they're just the top group you'll find. Also, they have great dog and daycare facility, dog and cat daycare facility. Camp May, open every day of the week. Sundays only, drop off and pick up 3 to 5. And don't forget, if you have cats that live together, they have the famous Connecting Cat Condos for cats that live together, can play together. They even have an outdoor pool. May Veterinary Clinic, proud sponsors of Rodney Orr and the Tider Insider Report. And Rodney, man, you know what? Those folks in other parts of the country this time of year, they're doing all kind of other goofy stuff. But down here in the South, man, we cover college football like kudzu and cotton, man. I love it. And let's talk about it. And by the way, it's not even humid yet, Rodney. But
I know.
ain't ever a dull moment, because I'm going up on the Spring River this weekend to catch me some rainbow trouts, 57-degree water coming out of the ground. But look, we had an interesting discussion early about dual quarterbacks and all competition. There's nothing wrong with competition. Let's talk about the quarterback room and take it from there at Alabama.
Well, that's a big question. That's a great question, Rob. There's a matter of fact, that's to me, that's the biggest question. You know, when you look at Alabama right now, is finding a quarterback and a guy that can help them, be successful. I think Alabama has a lot of really good players on both sides of the ball. They've got some inexperience, but I think they're capable of being I know a lot of people are selling Alabama short, thinking that this is, a team that's or a program that's kind of starting to just go downward a little bit. But I'm not necessarily sure I agree with that. I think that, again, there's a lot of really, really good players, and I just think the quarterback position is going to be extremely key to Alabama's success. And I'll say this too, while we're talking about that, the second game of the year is against Texas here in Tuscaloosa. I think that's going to be a really key game. I think Texas has some advantages in that game, coming in with an experienced quarterback. They've got some, really good young offensive line, got some great receivers, a stable of great receivers. I think they're returning 9 of 11 defensive starters on that side of the ball. So, in short, I don't think there's any excuses for Texas not to come in here and play well. And on the flip side of that, you've got the inexperience at Alabama in the secondary. You got the inexperience at quarterback. So that's going to be a really, really big game.
Well, it will be. And you go back to the quarterback thing. Lots of schools have competition, and they have a competition in the offseason. But part of it is coaches know, if we're being honest, which we always are, you have to be very careful about naming a starter at the end of spring practice, because in the world that we're in right now, you may have nobody there except your starter and a 7th team scout team guy. That's what you got to be careful of. But I go back to John Parker Wilson. 2007, he's Alabama's quarterback. They win the bowl game to go 7-6. The next year, he leads them to a 12-0 regular season record. And we've had John Parker on the show, went to Hoover, I think. Turned out to be a pretty damn good quarterback. Is it more, and I said this earlier with one of our guests in the first hour, is it more whoever the quarterback is, whether he's currently on campus or he's a transfer in like Tyler Buckner, he's still got to learn Nick Saban's system, doesn't he?
Yeah, definitely. I think even that goes for Tommy Rees. I think coming in as the offensive coordinator, he's certainly going to have his own ideas, but Saban has their system that they want to run. I do think they're probably going to change some things where it's not obviously as relying on quarterbacks, their quarterback in terms of, kind of carrying the load like Bryce did. I think they want to be a lot more balanced and run the ball more effectively. We've talked about that repeatedly. So I think that's going to take some pressure off of the quarterbacks. And I think the real focus that they're trying to get from the quarterbacks is hey, you've got to focus on yourself, your own development. That's who you're competing against and competing with, is yourself, to improve. And that's really the only way you're going to get better and to have an opportunity to win the job. So I think they're looking for that, from all of these guys.
Yeah. And, you hear this talk, you're right. And you referenced it a minute ago, Alabama slipping. Well, here they are, they're 11-2 last year. And we know there were 5 games that went down to the last play or the last drive. But Pete Golding is gone. He's gone to Ole Miss. You got Kevin Steele coming in. Kevin Steele, Jeremy Pruitt, whoever it was going to be, it's still, again, Nick Saban's going to be involved in the defense. If your defense is 35, 40% better this year, and Alabama, you and Gary Harris like nobody else, how much better will Alabama be, especially with that running back room to help out whoever the starting quarterback is?
No, I think it really kind of goes back to the mentality that they came into spring with, which was to be more physical on both sides of the ball. I think they want to get back to that. They kind of lost that edge that they had, that relentless mentality. That kind of slipped a little bit, Rob, over the last couple of years. And I think a lot of that went back to the style of offensive play that they had. They had gotten so quarterback oriented. They were trying to win it with Bryce's arm all the time. And, I think it has an impact on you when you talk about the physicality of it, the mindset. So I think that's a lot of it. I think when your offense lines up and is very physical in spring practice, guess what? It bleeds over to the defensive side.
Yep.
So that's the mentality that I think that they're going to approach this season with, is a relentless mindset. But Rob, I think this too, and this is, you mentioned Kevin Steele. I think the one thing is the effort. I just saw the effort defensively that had been. I just didn't see that edge over the last few years. I'm not trying to blame Pete Golding or whoever else. I'm just saying that I got to credit Kevin Steele for that, because I think he's brought that kind of edge back. We'll see how the season plays out. Obviously, I'm not predicting 12 shutouts, but I think the effort, he's kind of re-energized the players on that side of the ball.
Yeah, and I mean, you will see that Kevin Steele is a lot like I am Gunnery Sergeant Hartman. He reminds me a lot of him. I remember when my son was in his first year down at Auburn, he worked at the locker room clothing store up on Toomer's Corner, and Coach Steele would come in there a lot, and he would visit with he'd visit with Wilson, chewing on that cigar. I mean, I'm a big fan of his. I think he's going to be successful. But I talked with Alabama friend of mine here recently, and the discussion got into something you just touched on. And this is so important. I totally agree. Button heads, offense and defensive linemen against each other makes both of them tougher. But the other one is, you got to get back to your Ashawn Robinson, your Quinnen Williams, Marcel Darius. You got to get those, big, as they call them, the big dogs on the defensive line, getting after that quarterback's ass on every play, 2 and 3 deep on that front seven. That's what Kevin Steele is going to bring. I'm predicting it because I've watched him everywhere he's ever been.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think when you have Jaheim Otis, you have Justin Aboybe, Tim Smith, Jamil Burrows, James Smith, the true freshman, is going to be really good too, by the way. He had a very good spring. There's others that they have up front. I think, how do you develop those guys? And I think that's a real key. I think Alabama has more talent up front defensively than they've had. Let me be careful how I say this. I'm not saying they're Ashawn Robinson, Quinnen Williams. Or Jonathan Allen. What I'm saying is there have been some teams that have been very successful here under Nick Saban that didn't have the talent on the defensive line that this one has. Yeah. It's the potential that they have. I think they've got a lot of potential, but how are you going to develop those guys?
Yeah. Well, and you hit on it when they went 6 years ago, probably, from scoring in the low 30s per game to the mid 40s average per game. That takes a toll on those big defensive linemen, doesn't it? They can't be out there that many plays without it having an effect, a negative effect at that. That you're right.
No, yeah, that's kind of been the way it is with that style of play. It's Nick Saban's always said that you're going to give up something with that style of play. You're going to give up something. So I think really with the personnel they have and the things that they've learned over the last 2 years, I think that they want to get back to more. Ideally, that 2020 offense. Think about it. You had Najee Harris at running back pounding out 1,500 yards. You had Devontae Smith, the receivers, the explosive playmakers. Of course, Waddle before he was injured, but John Mechie. Obviously you wanted to use, all those skill players that you had. But being able to run the football, balance, and have a physical running game, I think that's really what they want to get to. Now, I don't know this year how close they'll be to that because, obviously the quarterback situation is you just don't know. There's questions there. But there's going to be so much youth, just so much youth, the receivers and all of that. So you're hoping that Jermaine Burton, Ja'Cory Brooks, those are two guys that have been around a while. I think Kendrick Law is a guy to really watch at receiver. Obviously Malik Benson, the JUCO transfer, is a big play potential guy. Look forward to seeing him. And I think Isaiah Bond, he's got to become more consistent catching the ball than he was in the spring, but he's got incredible big play ability. So, those are just some of the guys. They've got a lot of receivers that can contribute to the team.
Well, and you mentioned the receivers. We're talking about these great defensive linemen at Alabama. The receivers, everybody remembers that iconic photograph as the four players were walking out on the field. Henry Ruggs, Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle, and Jerry Jeudy, all first-round draft picks. Are there some receivers? You mentioned Ja'Cory Brooks and some other ones, but who among them you think is first-round talent?
Well, I think really the ones that I would say have the potential to be that because of their speed would be Malik Benson and Isaiah Bond. Now, I don't know that, Rob. I'm saying potential. Yeah. I think Bond has to become much more polished as a receiver and consistently catching the ball. But he has a lot of talent. A lot of speed, and Benson's the same way. Brooks is a physical player. He can be really consistent and make some plays for you. I think Jermaine Burton, and I'm not saying Brooks and Burton are first round guys by any means, but I think Jermaine Burton is a guy that could be. I really thought he was going to be like a Mechie type guy last year, but Jermaine Burton's obviously he's a talented kid, but I really like Kendrick Law. I think Kendrick Law has the right mindset. He's physical. He's tough. He can make plays. He's got hands. He's got a lot of tools. He does not look like a receiver. He's, I don't know what his exact height is, 5'11", but he's thick. He looks like a running back almost, or he's, maybe even a strong safety. But yeah, no, I think all of those guys have a chance to make a strong contribution.
And we look around in college football, everybody's got the portal. You got guys leaving, you got them coming. Alabama, the guys that are coming there are coming, it seems like most of them knowing they're going to be on a stacked depth chart at every position. Is that something that you would agree with? Because they don't seem to have 25 or 30 guys all just running out the door in the portal.
Yeah, I think, thinking about it, I think Trey Amos coming in at cornerback, that he's going to give them three quality corners, I think, or three, to some degree. I think Kool-Aid's a really, really good player. I think Terrion Arnold's a great athlete who's developing. And I think Trey Amos, with his experience and his ability, I think that's going to be really big. I think Jalen Key at safety, I've said this, they don't have a lot of experience back there. Obviously, Caleb Downs is one guy that's probably going to start. Malachi Moore has been a player, but he's at a new position kind of there at safety. He's been a star. And then, I think Christian Story, obviously, is a guy that doesn't have a lot of experience, been around, though. So CJ Dupree at tight end, I think he's going to have a great chance to start. Trez Marshall at inside backer, he'll battle there. Watch for Jihad Campbell at inside linebacker. Watch for Justin Jefferson at inside linebacker. Those guys are really, really, really good. and Buckner at quarterback. You know, if you ask me today, I'm just going to be honest with you. If you ask me today, project a quarterback, who do you think will start, or who would you just guess today? I would say Buckner.
Yeah.
There's a reason why they went out and got him, you know?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and I think I would project him today. Although I will say this, Ty Simpson has a ton of ability. I just
Yes.
don't know if he's ready yet. And I think Milroe obviously is a tremendous athlete, but consistency as a passer is key for him.
A quick question about Ty Simpson. You're right. Mac Jones was in the Alabama program for a long time before he got his chance. Late bloomer, you may want to call him that. Ty Simpson has all the physical tools in the world. His dad, 17 years, the head coach at UT Martin. You think we might see a story similar to what happened with Mac Jones with Ty Simpson?
You know, I mean, you could. I think Ty has all the ability. Now, look, Ty may go out there and win it in August. I mean, he's got the tools. Ty Simpson has the tools. I think it's just for him, it's just continuing to grow and mature, because a lot of people don't understand this, Rob. This spring was really his first opportunities to get a lot of snaps with the the first two units.
Got it.
So that was really big for him, and I think he got a taste of it. And now it's up to Ty. Okay, Ty, what are you going to do with it now? Now you realize what you should know by now what you have to do to win this job and to improve. So it's up to Ty right now, and it's going to be interesting to see how he picks up in August.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun battle to watch. But I know Gary Harris said one of the guys that he was working with as Alabama was getting ready to play San Diego State, that covers high school football out in San Diego, had a lot of kind words and high praise for Tyler Buckner. So, again, you don't know if he'd have won the job if he'd have stayed at Notre Dame over Sam Hartman or not. But I don't think all you can do is look at the track record of Nick Saban in Alabama and say, well, Roman Harper said it, and Nick, we trust. Until you go out and bring in someone who's a complete dud, and I don't see that happening, you got to say, well, they'll figure it out. But I think the takeaway from this conversation on the May Veterinary Clinic Rodney Orr Tighter Insider Report is the defense is looking like they're going to be better. And as you bring in a new quarterback, that's a plus, and then a strong running game. So, I mean, yeah, it's just great stuff, man. Unfortunately, we've run out of time, Rodney, but always great stuff on here. And let me say this before you tag out. Most often we see the face of Christ in the least among us. Don't ever miss an opportunity out there, folks, every day to help people and make a positive difference in people's lives. We live in the greatest country in the history of the world. Raise the flag every day and count your blessings, man. And Rodney Orr, tell people how they can follow you and the great Tighter Insider media empire.
Okay.
You're a media mogul.
TighterInsider.com is only $48 a year, and you can get instant access with your credit card if you prefer. There is an address there to send a check, and it gives you all our premium information. Right now, Rob, it's kind of slow, as you know, in May, recruiting to pick up next month a little bit, but really look forward to August camp. But then, our All Sports Forum, our community of Alabama fans, I'm telling you, the exchange of information, opinions, and all of those things, it's nonstop on TighterInsider.com.
Well, look, I mean, again, the reason why we're so good down here is if you want to be good at anything, you got to practice. And we practice talking about football every day on this show. So thank you, Rodney, so much for being with us. Have a great Memorial Day weekend. I know you will. And we'll look forward to your visit next week. Okay, everybody, until then, have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow. We are out of here.